back, everyone, to the Fly Culture podcast with me, Pete Tigers. I've had a few days in London. I took part in the March for Clean Water. The feel there and the vibe was absolutely fantastic. There were people connected with water on so many different levels. And of course, fishing was really well represented as well. And it was just so nice to march with people. We had a little gathering of people who met with us, and we walked together on the march, which was great fun as well. And I'm told there were 15,000 people there. Whether there was 15,000 or not doesn't matter. It was a lot of people, I know that. The interesting thing for me now is going to be to see whether government takes notice. I'm worried that there wasn't much on the news about it. That concerns me a little bit. And I do worry that sometimes these things do get swept under the carpet. The governments ride it out and think, right, okay, well, that was a tough news day. But it in places doesn't feel that. But what I think it's done is brought people into this now a little bit more deeply. So my hope looking further ahead is that more people get involved with these sorts of things, and we're not going to go away. And I think if the government realises we're not going to go away, then we might be able to affect change in some way. But having been up in the hustle and bustle of London, I felt like I've needed to get away. I just want to stand in a river, and I'm going to try and catch some grayling. I'm fishing the Tamar today. The Tamar, if you don't know it, is really the border between Devon and Cornwall. And I'm fishing the Devon side of it this morning. I've had a great sausage bap and a cappuccino, and so I'm ready to get going. It's just me out today. I just felt I wanted to get out for a number of reasons, and I'm along with my dog. And I was talking to my friend Andy yesterday about podcasts about dogs, and my dog Montana tends to come along a fair bit with me fishing. He's sort of kind of used to it. I know I get lots of messages and comments from people who have dogs and say, well, I wish my dog would be as well behaved, and I'm lucky he's pretty good. I think I told a story on one of the podcasts about where I hooked into a good fish, and I was trying to keep it away from a snag that was on the far bank, and I hooked the fish and thought, right, well, what I've got to do is if I hook this, I don't want him to go into that snag. So I hooked him and then ran across to try and stop him from going out. But of course he did go in there. The dog followed me, came out behind me, swam out, realised it was a bit too deep, decided he'd try and climb on my shoulders and watch as I was trying to get the fish out of the snag, then decided he didn't like that anymore. And so he got caught up in the fly line as he got off of me, and that was attached more to the rod. And so the rod was bending over, was hooped over. I don't like that term a whole lot, but it was absolutely hooped over almost to breaking point. But somehow I managed to get his leg out. Somehow I managed to get the fish in as well. So that's one of the downsides of it. But I'm very, very lucky. And from a young age, we took him to the river, let him see how we fished, what we did, when he could go in. So he's not sort of one of those dogs that goes running into the water. From very early on, we trained him not to go in. Yet if we do catch a fish, and there was another time I was fishing my friend Perry, and I was attached to a daytime 5-pound sea trout, and he's running out there trying to see what's going on there. So, you know, by all means, he's not perfect. But I guess what I'm trying to say with this is that if you take your dog fishing, it might cost you a couple of fish. He's cost me some, not many. I'm really, really lucky. But would I rather have him there? Yes, I would. So I'm really happy to have him along. And it's just good company. And I know I'm really enjoying my fishing when we just chat away to each other. Well, I say it's a chat away to each other. It's a one-way conversation. But I really enjoy spending time with him. And I'm sitting on the back of my car. I'm about to get into my waders. There's pine trees all around me. On my personal Facebook, I wrote something about comparing it to a steelhead river, and I've chosen this spot today for that because there's just nothing around, and I'm probably 150 feet, probably a bit more. I'm up high looking down on the river, and that's all I can hear. And I can hear the dog rustling around in the leaves. But he's great company. He doesn't want to bite the fish or anything like that. We have to, and many of my friends know with the dog, that you have to show him the fish. He likes to see it. For him, that's why we're here. We're here to catch fish. Now, it doesn't always play out that way, and today might be like that. I sent a message to Steve for a report, and he said, well, I got a message late back last night saying there's still a little bit of colour in the water, but I'm not particularly fussed about it. I just felt like I wanted to go fishing. I needed to go fishing. So it's going to be about a little bit more than that. Like I say, I'm fishing the Tamar today, and grayling on these rivers in the southwest. We don't have many rivers. It's primarily the Tamar and the X system, and then a little bit further up the line that we've got the Tone that has grayling as well, and then some of the tributaries of those rivers that grayling have come into. But often we don't get massive shoals of them, and you've got to keep moving. You've got to search the fish out, and I may get lucky, I may not. I'm gonna Euro nymph this morning, or tight line nymph this morning, and I've bought a rod, a Spanish rod called a Stickman, and it's a 9.5-foot rod, and I've used it with a dry fly. I was very luckily out in Spain recently fishing and really enjoyed that with my buddy Ray. And what I'm planning to do is see what it's like as a nymph rod as well. So I'm going to try that out as well and see. I'm always searching for that rod that does it all. I've also got the Witchwood Drift XL, which I think river is a little bit bigger here, and I think, to be perfectly honest, a slightly longer rod might help. So I've got that if I need it. Driving down today, the temperature was 12, 13 degrees. Is there a chance of some rising fish? There might be. There might be. So I've got another reel in my pocket, but I'm going to start off with the nymphs, see how I get on with those. My setup isn't that technical. It's really, really straightforward. And behind the indicator, I think I've got one of the Rio Euro nymph leaders. But over the years, I've used... I don't really care what's behind the leader, because I want something that can turn over the flies. And over the years, I've even used old cut down tapered leaders and use those to help turn over those flies. And then I've got the indicator is pink and yellow, I think it is, or green, I can't quite remember now. And then I've got some black permanent marker and just put a sort of a zebra mark down there as well, just so that in all light conditions that I can see any sign of a take from there. And then I'm pretty simple with these things. As I said, I'm not looking to win a competition. I'm not looking to catch hundreds of fish. But my first setup, usually what I'll do is stretch my arms out and take a length of line and then do half of that. And that will be the length of my tippet. And then I use from the end of my index finger to my elbow is where usually I'll put the droppers, that sort of distance apart. That's what I'm going to look at. When I get down to the river, dependent how big it is, then I'll decide on the weight of the flies. And I remember a podcast I did with Adam Price Hunts, I think it was, that he was saying he was using on his dropper a lot lighter fly now. So that's always ringing in my mind as well, that we don't always need to be hard on the bottom. And of course, with the water temperature and the air temperature isn't freezing cold. So there may be, and I remember a time fishing the Tone a number of years ago, that I saw a fish, grayling, come out of the depths a big distance just to take that fly as I was lifting it up through the water column. So that's in my mind as well. I'm thinking about the temperature there. So that's the sort of setup. I'm going to look to see if I can use this rod, see if it works for me. When it comes to the casting of them as well, I'm not fishing massive distances, but I found that if I can just get those nymphs up through the water column a little bit more, and then if I cock my wrist and then close it again, really nice and relaxed and not too gentle, but enough to turn those flies over, I can send them out. I've seen very often people trying to cast a nymphing line, and of course that's not going to work as fantastically well. And I find for the distances that I'm fishing, that works really well for me. The thing that you've got to remember is that by cocking the wrist and closing it, it's going to send the flies over with a great big loop. So if you've got trees nearby, then be wary of that, because they will kick over very high. So you've got to think about that a little bit. if I think I'm close to something, then the bow and arrow will come in. And I've been talking with Ed Thompson. Again, we talked on the walk, I think, about it as well. He's doing some interesting stuff with bow and arrows and longer distance with them as well. So it's been lovely to see that's a cast that has come into play for a whole lot more people now, and hopefully catches them a few more fish. But I'm going to hop into my waders. I can it looks as though, there's a bit of colour in the water. So I'm thinking, right, do I need to think about something to attract the fish, something that stands out a little bit? We'll wait and see. But for me, it's really nice being in November. And usually these rivers are tending to be written off this time of year. So Warren and I tried, I think it was January last year, and it was minus whatever it was. The snow came in. It was absolutely freezing. But yeah, it feels pretty mild at the moment. So yeah, I'll hop into my waders, set myself up, and let's see if we can find a fish. It's nothing like the sound of a river. Down here now, we've made a little walk downstream. My gut is saying that clarity's fine, so that's not a problem. It's the height of the river, it's a little bit leery, and so I'm going to have to choose the spots where I get in carefully. It's quite rocky down here, and so you have to take great care. So I'm thinking about that. I've also just had to put some new studs in my boots as well. I'm sure you do these things anyway, but I fitted them with some arrow dye into the hole first that will hopefully hold a little bit longer for me as well. And I'm pleased I put them in. I'm sort of standing at the back of a pool because I think the flow's a little bit more even, a little bit slower. And I think that might be where I might get a shot at some of these fish. So I'm going to have a look there. Things like flies, I was thinking about that as well, that I keep my flies, I only use 2 fly boxes. I have the patch, that I've talked about previously on older podcasts, but I have 2 fly boxes, and the way that I can remember, instead of me having to pat everything down, I keep my dry flies on the left side, and I think they're nice and close to my heart because that's what I love about fly fishing, is throwing a dry fly at perhaps a rising fish. So it's nice and easy for me to remember. So I always know where my dry flies are and where my nymphs, so I don't have to do that pat down that I see quite regularly. Also sunglasses. I've gone old school this year and I've been wearing Ray-Ban Wayfarers, and they do a polarized version, so they've been great. Not had any issues with them whatsoever. But at this time of year, I worry about light conditions, and I tried sort of the yellow light sunglasses years back, but they gave me such a headache. But a few years back, I found photochromic sunglasses, and for me they're ideal in lower light conditions. And if you're not aware of what photochromic is that they will lighten and darken given how much brightness there is. So in these low light conditions, and it's pretty low cloud at the moment, they're going to allow me to see a whole lot easier. And it's not for me so much about spotting fish today, it's about watching that indicator. They are polarized glasses as well, so I can see pretty well with them as well. But again, those little things make life a little bit more easier for me. I put my flies on. I've got it's like a hare's ear type thing with a light pink bead on it on the point. And then I've put a Duracell on the dropper. It's a great fly. I just love it. I feel confident when I've got it on as well. They're both, I think, 3.5 mil. So we'll see if that gets me down enough. As I said, I think one of the challenges is going to be is the rocks and the bottom. The terrain here isn't even at all by any means, and you can probably hear the noise of the river in the background that lets us know that. So I think I'm going to have to carefully pick my way around rocks and be wary of where my flies are drifting through the water column as well. So I'll be thinking about that a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of cool. The dog's happy. He's out. Hasn't been in the river once. I don't think he's probably going to get in here. It's a little bit too strong, and he doesn't. I'm really lucky again. Because he gets fishing, if I'm fishing for trout, he will wade next to me, which is really, really neat. There's really I'm very, very lucky on that front. He's just climbed onto a rock to have a look at the river at the moment. And then if we're swinging for salmon, he doesn't tend to be in the river. He'll walk down the bank. But the funny thing for me is when we get to the end of a run, and has been often the case for me, that not catching a fish, but when we wind in at the end of the run, his ears prick up and what's going on? Have you got one? Have you got one? And I love that aspect of it. So he's really tuned into fishing. He's 8 now. He'll be 9 in April, and I've just loved having him along on the fishing journey with me. And yeah, him being part of this, and I can say to him, we're going fishing, and his ears are prick up. He knows exactly what that is, and he's having a good look round at the moment, thinking, right, if I need to get in here, where do I actually go in case he catches a fish? So we'll see how we get on. But yeah, excited just a little bit. So it's been quite an interesting start. I wanted to get in where I talked about previously, but the problem was it was just a little bit too deep. And there's some sage advice that goes around this time of year, that if you're thinking about grayling fishing in winter and the water's cold, take a spare pair of clothes, which I'm heartily endorse. But I don't actually do that myself. And the reason I don't is that it keeps me honest. So I don't put myself in a position where I think I'm going to go under. Of course, these things we don't know if they're going to happen, if a rock's going to, or you're going to trip, or you're going to slip, or you're going to slide. But a lot of the time I'm really, really careful about where I am. The river is a bit bigger, so I'm wary of that as well. And there's a lot of places that I'm thinking to myself, I don't need to get into. Other things that I've noticed is that, geez, it's warm. You know, I had a fleece over a T-shirt and I was absolutely sweating buckets. So I've taken the fleece off and I'm just in a T-shirt, long sleeve T-shirt at the moment. And I'm working the way up the river, and Dog's with me. He's sort of we can't get far out into the river. It's just too big to actually cover the whole lot. But that doesn't matter, because what I'm doing is looking for that slacker, slower flows, even flows where there might be a fish. And do you know what? Probably the second spot I fished, line, the indicator went, I set, and there was a fish on, and it was a trout. It was a trout of about 8-9 inches, something like that, that I managed to get in, just shook the hook and off it went. And of course, I'm not going to take photos of those out of season fish this time of year, so they're not of interest to me. But I took one step up, flipped my nymphs in, lost one on a rock, retied again, flipped in, and had a grayling. And that was really pleasing to see. Not the biggest grayling in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it was really pleasing to see that. And I've not waded out into the middle of the river, because I've just tried to pick where I think fish will be. I'm playing the averages, so it means that I'm covering water relatively quickly. I'm walking up, right, this looks like a spot. No, that's a bit too deep. If I can fish some of it from the bank, I'll do that as well. So I'm trying to look for those spots that I just previously described, and I'm really pleased that that's happened. I don't want to go out into the middle. I don't want to put it, my day doesn't rest on the number of fish I caught or not blanking. I don't care about any of that shit, to be honest. I just want to be out having a good day with my friend, and we're doing that. And the interesting thing, coming back to the weather, is the temperature that I've not seen many bugs hatch. So I don't know if it's going to be one of those intense, quickly happens and then finishes equally as quickly. But I'm keeping half an eye out just to see if I can see anything. And if I do, then I can make the changes. I've got somewhere upstream in mind that I think that I might just get lucky with. And there was a spell I fished there with a friend of mine. I'm not going to say who it was, but he likes to a leisurely start. And it was bright summer and there were fish rising tight into the bank. And the sun was just starting to come up, and I was saying to him in the politest way I possibly could, if I was guiding, I'd have probably got the rig set up myself for him. But this moment's going to go very, very quickly. And unfortunately, the moment he got into the river, that the sun had come onto the pool and the fish switched off equally as quickly. And that's one of those things of winter. You know, you've got to take those opportunities. If you see some rising fish, that you could make hay while the sun shines, and if you do see those rises, go for it. But I'm really enjoying it. The rod's been up to it. I mentioned nets as well, and I mix them up because there's two nets that I really, really like, and it's Eden made nets from Roger up there, and Damien's living the dream net as well. And I'm using the living the dream net, and Damien, the net's wet, so thank you for that. And I just mix them up. I like them both. I bought both of them as well. I don't get given things to say nice things. I really strongly believe in supporting people within our industry and doing everything I can to mention them. But yeah, that's been fun to get that into action as well. There's a pool up. I'm looking upstream. The river, to give you an idea, is probably 70, 80 feet across. It's too deep to wade across. It's not like a freestone river, really. It's a spate river, and it's very, very deep in the middle. The boulders are big. I'm looking at one probably the size of a small car, one of the size of a skip. They're pretty big things. So you just got to be a little bit careful. If I can see the bottom and I think there's a rock in the way, then I'll jig the fly a little bit or slowly lift it and try and guide it round or over just to see. And these sort of things, I'm really enjoying thinking about the fishing because I haven't got the whole river to play with. So I've got to pick and choose exactly the right spots, but I'm enjoying that. But Dog seems all right. He's been wading up alongside me. He got excited when we had the fish as well. So that was good. They all stuck on. So that was good. I can see one minuscule midge above my head at the moment, so that's an encouraging sign. So yeah, I'm going to keep an eye out. I've of course left my floating line back at the car, but it's not too far away, so if something happens I'm going to run as quickly as I can. It's not that quick, but I'm going to run as quickly as I can, see if I can find the fish. But yeah, it's nice. The clouds low. It just looks like North America here. It really does, with the pines close down to the river, the big rocks. Part of me almost felt like I was, should perhaps put a duo on or a dry dropper and flip into the little pots and see. But I'm kind of enjoying it at the moment. Nymphing isn't my number one way of fishing. Not that I don't dislike it, but I like fishing other ways. But you've got to fish the right method for the conditions. And I think at the moment, this is the right method for these conditions. Move further downstream, just a short distance, but the river takes on a completely different look now. And rather than it being in a steep valley, it's a little bit wider. It's more freestony, so it's a little bit shallower. I'm sort of standing mid-river at the moment, and I'm about thigh deep at the moment. I've seen that I've had to make slightly longer casts. The flow is lovely and even. There's probably 4 lanes where there could be fish. Second cast, another brown trout. Worked up a little bit further. I was keeping half an eye on Mont because he can't walk up through this, but he's been, bless him, walking along the bank, watching everything. Then I hooked into another fish, and for a second I thought, this might be a nicer grayling, but it was actually a small sea trout of about a pound. And Mont came along, walked downstream into the shallow water, got in, swam up to me, had to show him the fish and put it back again. So yeah, it's interesting. The casts I've been making a little bit longer, and I've been thinking about what I said about the rotation of that wrist to just turn those flies over and casting a little bit further. I'm sort of kind of making a push forward or a forward cast with a big rotation that's allowing those flies to flip over and turn over really nicely and get me to the spots that I want to get. So it's kind of nice from that point of view. Downstream, as we were walking up, did see a rise at the back of the pool. There was no way, it was too deep for me to get in. My guess was that it was probably a trout because of the rise. Generally speaking, because of the shape of a grayling's mouth and the way that it takes a fly from the surface, generally speaking, not always the case, but generally speaking, there'll be a ring in that rise, and there wasn't on that one. So I waited for a little bit and thought, I might put the floating line on and perhaps make a cast at it if I see the ring. But my gut was that it was probably a trout, so I thought it was best left alone. But it's fascinating making a change of location just a little bit. I'm probably half a mile, 3/4 mile downstream from where I was, but completely different river. And I really feel that I can cover water a little bit more. The water I talked about, those even flows, steady flows of water. So might we get the other one? I'm reminded of, I meant to say on the earlier segment, that I'm kind of reminded of my dad when I grayling fish, and friends of mine know that if we find a pod of fish, and we don't always on these streams in the West Country. Sometimes on the smaller streams we do, but not always. But if I catch one, it reminds me of when my dad used to play cards, and he was an avid card player. And if he had 3 queens, he'd call them Hessie, Bessie and Jessie. And so if I get the first one, that's Hessie. The queens are the lady of the scream. You can see my train of thought there, but it's my nice little thing that if I catch 3, then it's a Hessie, Bessie and Jessie. So we'll see. But catching a sea trout, catching a trout, it's not what I'm after. I'm not obviously, of course, targeting them, but it's been kind of fun. So I'm going to keep working up this pool a little bit further. Mons is wet now. So he came up, so instead of jumping in on the bank opposite me, he came all the way downstream and in and up, and perhaps that is the sign of a good fishing dog. A couple of things about almost trusting your gut, your feelings. Sometimes it's not always right. I've sort of been working up this flat, wide, thigh-deep water, and every now and again there's a few rocks that sort of divert the flow a little bit, speed it up a little bit, and I'd changed to one of Warren's caddis bugs. A little bit heavier, and it's caught me a few fish in the past, and I fish it with a great deal of confidence. But where this faster water is, I was thinking, I wonder if, we might get some hatch, some olives up in that fast water. Perhaps I should change it to something else. I'd been fishing a pheasant tail on the end, and was thinking about these sorts of things, and your senses are a little bit heightened anyway, because you're sort of thinking about where you're going to be fishing, where a fish might be. You're kind of almost not surprised when the indicator just darts a tiny bit, and lo and behold, I catch a grayling, probably half pound, something like that. Absolutely thrilled with that. I'd taken some photos of the dog on the far bank. He's been absolutely fantastic. He came out to see, I'd caught another trout as well, but he'd come out to see me, but he's decided, right, the water, I'm not coming out there anymore. So he's just walking along the bank with me, and I'm so lucky. Thing to bear in mind with your fishing dogs as well, if you're fishing club water where you're allowed to take a dog, be wary of livestock. And I'm very, very lucky again that his temperament's fantastic. A sheep poked its head over, he barked, and that was enough for the sheep to say, yeah, no, I don't think I'll come here. And it doesn't chase after them. So I'm extremely lucky on that front. A couple of other things I've been thinking about as well, that throwing that slightly longer line, and so that I keep that line nice and tight, I'm figuring weighting it back, but how my mind works as well. It's so good for us fishing, how it clears your mind. And I was thinking about what does your non-rod arm do when you're fishing a short line Euro style? Do you teapot? What do you do? Are you gurning? Are you poking a tongue out? All of those sorts of little things are making me smile, and whether I'm teapotting sometimes or not. But they're things that sort of go through my mind. And I guess that's the flushing out process as well, that we're standing in a river doing stuff that we love, that we're enjoying, and it's great fun. I tried to take a photo of the grayling because I thought that was okay. That's in season. That's what I'm after. Not the greatest one I've ever taken, but that'll do. And it's a memento of this day so far. Just sitting in the back of the car. The back door's open. And we've both been sitting on there and watching the river below me. Had a Cornish pasty, really peppery one, a good one, which I really, really enjoyed. And I'm thinking about whether to go back or not this afternoon and have a little bit of a look and see. But Mons has had a good go in the water. So he's been wading. I went downstream a little bit and fished a pool down there. And he's wet. And I don't want him to get cold. I don't want his, arthritis or whatever it might be that gets him as he's getting a little bit older. So I'm probably going to call it from now and think, that's enough. I've had an amazing day. I've caught Hessie and Bessie, but Jessie eluded me. I think if I fished a bit harder and focused a little bit harder, then perhaps that might have came along. But I'm not really worried about stuff like that. I've fished very few flies. I've lost very few, which is fantastic. I've lost just the one, and that's great. And I'm really, really happy. I don't feel the need to have to catch a bunch of fish to say that's been a good day. It's been a good day, and I've enjoyed the company of my dog, and hopefully passed along a few tips along the way as well. That's what I was trying to do as I was thinking about it as it happened on the river, and those little changes that you can make, or the way that you think about how you're getting your fly from A to B, might make life a little bit easier for you and a little bit more enjoyable. And yeah, every moment of it has been absolutely fantastic. I wasn't expecting to catch a bunch of fish, but it doesn't matter. I'm really not fussed about that in the slightest. And yeah, I think I'm probably had enough now. I'm happy. I might stop off somewhere, get a drink. We'll see. And see how we get on. But yeah, if your dog is coming fishing with you, there are some sacrifices that you've got to make, but I'm really happy to make those. And if it means a few fish or an extra hour of fishing, I don't mind that at all. To have him along and be part of that. And he feels really part of this as well. You can see him focused. And I thought as he was walking along the bank, he's going to get a little bit bored and go up high and explore. And he didn't. Stayed focused. And I think that's fair to say, right, okay, well, we've had a good go. I keep some treats in the back of the car. So if we're staying for the day, that we'll sit and have some lunch, and once we've finished eating, then we'll give him some treats. And I finished my pasty. I didn't give him any because it's got onion in it as well. So he's got the treats in the back. They're always a no there, and it's a way of saying, well done, mate. You've been fantastic company. You behaved impeccably, and that's it. He's everything I've wanted him to be as a dog. I couldn't ask any more. And you always worry as your dog gets a little bit older that how you're going to cope when he's not there. But I know even if, God forbid, something happened to him overnight, I know he's had an amazing life. And I've been really fortunate to be able to give that to him. So I can still smile at that. So I'm really happy about that. I'm going to end with a slightly serious Uncle Pete. And I saw something out on social media this morning, and I talk about it a little bit on here. And I worry about people worrying social media is everything. And I've seen desperate posts of late, and just don't worry about it. And somebody on socials this morning said that they'd heard that there were people taking pictures of fish and then passing the fish to their friends so it looked like they'd caught it. And really, you don't have to worry about it. Social media isn't everything. And once we've pressed like, we've probably forgotten about the post anyway. And people are going to extreme lengths to, I don't know what they're really looking for. Fly fishing, you're never going to get rich in. You're never going to have untold fortune. You're not going to get free kit. It doesn't happen. And perhaps some of this does lean towards manufacturers, that we're seeing them moving away from this influencer lifestyle, and I think fishing will be all the better for that. But try not taking your phone along to a day's fishing. You don't have to photograph everything. It doesn't matter, and enjoy fishing for exactly what it is. And as I said, try not taking your phone along sometime and see what you make of it all. But fishing's fun. That's why I do it, and I understand it, and I understand how it works. And yeah, I'm perfectly happy. There's a lot of times I don't post anything, and I only post something if I've got something to say. I don't ever get Instagram diarrhea where I feel, God, I've got to post this, I've got to take a picture of this, I've got to take a picture of that, I better have a story, I better have a reel, I might get more followers. It doesn't matter. Honestly, doesn't matter. Don't worry about it, and enjoy fishing for exactly what it is. Sorry to end that on a serious note, but I do worry about these things. And yeah, I worry about how it affects people's health. And I see, as I said, people feeling they've got to post stuff for the sake of it. And it really worries me that you just don't have to. Don't worry about it. Enjoy it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've no idea how long it is. I've just sort of recorded stuff as it happens. There's not been loads of takes. Sometimes I get a few words wrong, but it's exactly as it's happening on the river and exactly what I'm thinking at that time. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. Just me and Montana. Thanks so much for listening to the Fly Culture podcast.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.